Hello, and welcome to yet another Friday as we're going to be discussing chapter 5 of Coach Prime's book, Elevate and Dominate 21 Ways to Win on and off the Field. As always, thank you very much for joining us on this lovely day. Make sure you grab yourself a book, grab your book, grab your pen, and join us in the conversation. It's definitely going to be a lovely one. And as we tried last time and everyone enjoyed it, one thing that we're doing now is just help ourselves and just get into the mood with some background music. If you've read chapter 5, are you a leader or a dog? Right? That's a statement we all know Coach Prime says a lot, right? We always hear him say, not every leader is a dog and not every dog is a leader. So today we're going to be asking ourselves, which one are you? Are you a leader or a dog? So for chapter 5, it begins by saying, just because you're at the head of the line and getting stuff done, that does not make you a leader. Just because you talk real loud and get people's attention, that does not make you a leader. Just because every day everybody's clapping for you, that doesn't make you a leader. There's no shame in not being a leader. Instead, you may be a dog. Right? So it's something for us to think about. Right? Later on, he said, he basically explains the meaning of being a dog. Right? A dog is someone who takes control and takes command of the situation. They don't wait. They act. They go get it. They subdue and dominate, right? So, and he later said, on my teams, we have leaders and dogs, right? So also in life, like, which one are you? Are you a leader or a dog? One thing that he later said in that chapter is to give us insight as to his perspective of leadership is leaders make decisions, right? But it's one thing to note that as a leader, you have to ask questions, right? Because you also have to listen. But when it's time for decision to be made, leaders act, right? So, just taking that and applying that to real life situation, in different situation, either at home or at work, you might be in position of leading yourself or leading others. So you have to make sure you ask questions. Ask the right questions. Make sure you listen. And when it's time to make a decision, make sure we act, right? So the other thing is leaders don't look back. If things are going well, they wear it and don't make excuses, right? If that decision turns out to be great, they don't take all the credit. I think this is one key thing that, we need to make sure that we're doing well, right? So it's like if something happens, right, on the team, right, don't throw people under the bus, right? Make sure that you do your job of protecting those people and just saying, hey, you know what? It's my fault. I'll take blame for it. And if things become successful and people are given credit, make sure that your team and the people that you're leading or people that are involved also get that credit, right? So the other thing, like we said, and we started today's chapter discussion with something that Coach Prime always says a lot. Every leader isn't a dog. And for Denshaw, every dog isn't a leader. So I think that's certainly important, something that we should always try to resonate. There's a role for each and every one of us, right? So he later on says, dogs execute the plan. They have a work ethic like no other, right? And they always finish the job because their pride will never allow anything else, right? So the dogs are usually needed on the team and they have a place on the team. And when it's time to execute, you can always rely on a dog to go out there and execute, right? So even though leaders and dogs have different skill sets, they're similar in one very important way. They are both decisive, right? So there's every place for everyone, So later on, as we flip over, the other thing that he said that certainly resonated was the best leaders are usually great listeners, right? So, and I think that's one thing I would like to emphasize on. The best leaders are usually great leaders, right? And in order to be a listener, right, sometimes we listen to rebuttal, right? We listen to just respond and not listen to comprehend. So I think here we can definitely note that these leaders, right, they're listening to comprehend, right? And they're listening they're attentive listening, right, to garnish information that they can definitely execute on and make decision based off of. You know, the as we move on to the next subtopic, which is the leader's mindset. Right now, we're talking about the brain frame of work and the thinking process of a leader. Right, one thing that he definitely says was the leaders are great communicators. Right, so in order to be a good leader, you need to be a great communicator, right? And he later said, what does it mean to be a communicator, right? That means a leader, right? They explain the plan in details, right? They hand the plan and give it to you in details, either in written form, email, or so that way it's easy for you to commit it to memory, right? Meaning it has to be concise and precise and easy for you to be able to understand it. So that's definitely important, right? So later on in that chapter 5, one thing that he also said that resonated with me was to be the right kind of leader. There are 4 key strategies to keep folks engaged and motivated. 1, keep them informed. 2, keep them involved. 3, keep them interested. 4, keep them inspired. Right? So those are the key things that he believes it needs to happen in order to keep people engaged and motivated. I think that's definitely important, right? So as a leader, right, ensuring that you're keeping people involved, keeping people informed, interested, and inspired. Right. One thing that a lot of people drop the ball at is the inspiration part. Right. So it's easy for you to get information that trickles down from leadership and pass it on to people, right? Or just say, hey, you do this, you do that, right? And without understanding if they're actually interested in doing that segment of the job, right? And also, even if they're not interested in doing that, how does one go about inspiring them, helping them understand, that this is a role that they need to play at this time, and finding ways and language and words and actions to inspire them and motivate them, right? And I think that's all. It's all encompassing in active leader, right? Has to be good at communicating, right? And there are different types of communication. Right. Later on, he said something that also resonated. He said, when talking about good leaders, I'm talking about people who really do not leave. Like it was given example, right, in terms of what are some of the reasons why people are faced with different challenges when it comes to leaders that are not effective, right? So there might be situations whereby people don't want to leave their jobs, right, and they feel like they have to leave, right? So in these cases, you might love your job, you might love the situation you're in, but you don't have a good leader, right? So in that situation, you need to pivot, right? And in most cases, the reason why people leave that situation is because, one, they either need to be challenged, right? Because what they're doing is repetitive and it's not mind stimulating for them, and they need a challenge. And it's good for a leader to recognize that and help them place themselves in a place where it's challenging for them. But in a situation whereby that does not happen, people move on, right? And also they feel uninspired. And when you have a leader that is not able to inspire their workforce and is actually has made different type of derogatory comments, that does not lead to inspiration, because those words, they sort of dig deep into your team or whoever it is that you're leading, right? And also they want to feel valued, right? Everyone wants to feel valued, right? They want to feel a part of the team. right? And therefore, the type of word choices and the way we communicate with them has an influence in making them feel valued, right? They also need feedback and structure, right? So giving them good feedback, balanced feedback, not just all negative feedback, because negative feedback does not motivate people. Negative feedback does not inspire anyone, right? You might think it's a way for you to get their attention, but it is deleterious. It is deleterious to the team. It is deleterious to the psyche. It is deleterious to inspire people, right? Imagine someone just bashing you at every goal. You're not going to feel valued. You're not going to feel inspired, and definitely you're not going to be. You're not going to want to put yourself in a situation whereby you take on anything more challenging, because at the end of the day, you feel like you're going to get negative feedback, right? So the other thing that he also said that was sort of interesting is, you know, you could argue that all those reasons reflect lack of leadership, right? Sounds to me like these are working folks didn't have much communication with their boss. Maybe they never had the opportunity to explain their situation or what they needed, right? Uh, you know, or shoot. And sometimes these bosses might be shocked when those people leave, right? You know, so the other sub topic here, uh, titled "Start the Conversation." One thing that he said that also resonated was, as a leader, you need to know your folks beyond the office, right? Who's in their family? What do they care about? How do they like to have fun? What are the long-term goals, right? How great, if you know these things about you folks, you're going to have a great feel, right, for how they're wound and what drives them, right? This information enables you to develop insights, right? But there's one thing that I always like to caution people about, right? Depending on the type of leader that you are, right? Sometimes, you know, learning about your team is always a good thing, right? But making sure that the information that you learn about them is not used against them is also much, much important. I'm going to repeat that. If you learn an information about your team, making sure that what you learn about them, you don't use it against them in the future is much, much important, because then you lose their trust, right? Then they find it hard to share things with you, right? And then it becomes a very, very deleterious environment for everyone, right? Later on, he said, if you have a motivated worker, right, who feels like you've always got their back, right, then it's easier for you to know the right buttons to press, right? The key thing here that I annotated here was, the people that you're leading feeling like you have their back, feeling like you're not going to throw them under the bus, right? Feeling like you're going to protect them, right? That part is really, really important. As the leader, you will have to be okay with protecting the people that you're leading. So moving on, he gave us an insight as to the situation with his a player who was a left guard, and how he was able to have a conversation with that player, and what he always tries to do was empty himself first, meaning share his own story, making that individual much comfortable to share their story, right? And he was able to accomplish that and also help this young man who was heartbroken from having his girlfriend break up with him, right, to feel a lot better. And at the end of the day, this young man went on to be the first team all-conference player. That was beautiful, right? Recognizing that someone needed help, being vulnerable enough to share your situation to them, making them comfortable enough to share theirs, and in turn helping them get past that situation. Not all people can do that. That's why not everyone can be a leader, right? just because you have a leadership title does not make you a leader. Just because you got to a leadership position somehow, that does not make you a leader. Because being a leader means you're a servant first. You put others before yourself. You have to serve, right? That's what it means to be a leader. The other thing that he says that was definitely resonate is, throughout that situation, he said he was giving the young man some love and understanding, and just meeting him at the point of contact. That's the key thing: love and understanding, right? We might not all go through the exact same scenario, right? We might not have the same experiences, but just helping that individual feel loved and understanding, or trying to understand the situation that they're going to, goes a long way, right? And then showing that you care for them, showing that you have their back, and showing that you're not going to throw them under the bus. And as we said earlier, it's important that what they do share with you doesn't end up in a report somewhere. What they do share with you doesn't end up in a feedback report. What they do share with you, you don't use it against them later. Even when you're giving them feedback, you don't use those vulnerable moments to scold them, because then they will never be inclined to share something with you going forward, right? The subtopic here, that titled "Be Clear with Your Expectation." Coach Prime said, if you're not clear with those expectations, your team will be lost, right? So in being clear with your expectation, it's important to be clear and concise, right? Like you said, clear and concise, saying, hey, this is what is expected. This is how I expect it, right? And also, he said something also, it's like, lead by example, right? There are a lot of people out there that consider themselves leaders, but they're leaders by title, they're leaders by vocalization, they're leaders by luck, but they are not leaders by example. But the best leaders are leaders by example. Like they say, they can put their actions speak louder than their words, right? Because when people see them doing it, it becomes easier for others to follow, right? The other thing that he also said that we just talked about is, your team is watching you. So it's important to set good example. And in setting good example and showing that you respect yourself and you respect others, the way you respect your team reflects on how they respect you. There might be people on your team that won't say anything because they consider you the leader, but their behavior and what they tell their colleagues, right, and the way they execute on your job will definitely have a reflection on whether you're a good leader or not. Later on, one thing he said was holding people accountable, right? So that's the other subtopic, holding people accountable, right? And he said something that also resonated here. Leaders must hold their people accountable for their actions. And I believe this is true. No one is perfect. People are going to make mistakes, right? That's why you as a leader are there to guide them, hold them accountable, right? Help them get better, right? But one thing that also is important is that he said is you're showing them that you believe in them. You're telling them that they can do better, right? And that you're willing to help them get there. So that's why the way we communicate, the way we address things is important, right? Because when you say something and do something else, it's hard. It might be challenging for someone to believe that you want something better for them or you actually believe in them, right? So a lot of what we talked about, right? If they share something with you, they don't find it in a report, because then it's like, wait, or if they share something with you, you don't use it to scold them. You don't use it against them, right? Because now it'll be fine. It'll be challenging for that individual to understand that you believe in them, or challenging for that individual to understand that you're willing to help them and you're willing to help them get better. All right? You also give us example of what are some of the ways that we can sort of, help people, get help hold people accountable, right? He talked about one-on-one conversation, right? He talked about people having called them out in front of the team, right? But he said by far, right? Or you can give them a written warning. In extreme cases, you fire them. But what's the best way? And he says it definitely depends on the situation, but the most important by far is to be consistent, right? So later on, he gave us some quick tips on how to deliver the message, talking about be specific about what you expect. It's important to be fair. It's important to be consistent. It's important to be respectful, right? Stating that the bottom line is, if you're showing your team member you believe in them, if your message is clearly and consistently delivered, right, they will understand that. And in time, they will greatly appreciate it, right? So the other subtopic here is taking the ultimate responsibility, right? Not all leaders are good at this. Not all leaders are good at this, right? But it's okay, right? As a leader, your biggest job is making sure your team is successful. Therefore, you must take responsibility for your actions. Yeah? And when it comes right down to it, you've got to make some tough decisions. Yes. Right? So later on, if there's other thing that he said, is when you take responsibility, the team will pick up on your confidence and they will know that you believe in them. So what does this mean? It means as a leader, someone on your team might make mistake. But if you take responsibility on that person's behalf, they know that you have their back. And if you take responsibility on that person's behalf, right, and not just throw that person to the wolves or to senior leadership or to the world and say it's this person's fault, that person's fault alone, so be it, right? It's important for people to know that you believe in them, right? So the other thing that he also said that resonated was you're also showing that you're willing to take the risk and not afraid to fail. When you take the responsibility as the leader on that person's behalf, leading the charge, it says, man, I have your back. I'm willing to go to bat for you. I'm willing to take the risk, and I'm not afraid to fail. We're in this together. And those type of action rejuvenates the team. Those type of action make people also want to go to bat for you as their leader. All right? And also, the other thing that he said here that is key for all leaders to adopt is admit when you're wrong. Apologize for your mistakes. Be honest and upfront. You as a leader, you're vulnerable. You don't know it all. You might have done the process wrong. You might not have investigated. And when it comes to situation, I'd learn to say, hey, you know what? I am wrong here. I shouldn't have done this. I admit to this mistake. Going forward, I plan to fix it. Right? So the other thing that he also said that resonated is, how do you move forward in difficult moments? Regardless of the difficult moments, one thing that he said was, one, get all the information that you can. Earlier, we talked about how the best leaders, they listen, they ask questions. Investigate is what he's saying. Get more information and be equipped with the right amount of information to be able to make a good decision, right? 2, consider all options. There's usually more than one way to solve a problem. And don't just take the easiest way that absolves you and throws your teammate under the bus. There's usually more than one way to solve a problem. 3, weigh the pros and cons of each option. Consider the potential benefits and drawback of each option. What can you live with? What's off the table? 4, making a decision and sticking to it. Right? So that's pretty much chapter 5 in a nutshell. But as always, Coach Prime always gives us the Coach Prime takeaways after each chapter. So for chapter 5, the takeaway is, if there's anything that's, if you don't remember anything from what we've discussed today, is leaders make decisions. They don't rely on any committee. They're not wishy-washy. They make decisions. 2, communication is everything, right? And communication is 2 ways, from leader to the subordinates, from the subordinates to the leader, right? 3, be clear and concise with the expectation that you set as a leader. Don't tell people, show them your leadership. People need to know that you care about them, right? 4, you must consistently hold people accountable for your expectations of them, right? And 5, you can't shrink as a leader, meaning you need to stand up tall. You must take the ultimate responsibility, and sometimes that means making the tough decisions, right? Don't take this moment lightly, but don't run from them either. People want to know that their leader is confident and decisive. And ladies and gentlemen, that's it for chapter 5. And as we conclude today's analysis and conversation about chapter 5, I will leave you with this. Are you a leader or a dog? It's certainly time to do a self-reflection. And remember, not every leader is a dog, and not every dog is a leader. There's a place for you out there. Find yours. Until next time, have a lovely day. And remember to join us every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we discuss Coach Prime's book, Elevate and Dominate, 21 Ways to Win on and off the field. It's been a pleasure. Stay blessed, stay hungry, and dominate everything that you do. Because there's a leader and a dog in each and every one of you. But before you log off, make sure you like this, share this, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.